Okay, I think that the leadership lessons that we learned from the biblical characters and in the AI chats and the case studies and things helped shape my understanding of Christian leadership and management, and the fact that I didn't fully understand how suffering contributed to growth. And so, especially through like Joseph and his like vision of like him being a leader before he was equipped to do so was really interesting to me to see how he went through that suffering, but that ultimately led him and built him up into the position of power that God had called him to. Um, and I think the biblical principle that influenced my thinking the most was honestly a couple of these last ones that we did, but specifically Nehemiah. I talked about it in my first discussion board when I believe the AI chat told me like two things can coexist at once, like the grief and the waiting, but also like obedient action to God's kingdom can exist at the same time. And I have a really hard time doing that and seeking clarity in one thing before I feel like I can move into the other thing effectively. And so that was something that was really impactful for me and is something that I expect to carry forward in my professional life, that I don't necessarily have to have the answer for one thing before I can act in obedience to start leading the movement or the people that I'm working with in that direction. As long as, I've fasted and I've prayed and have sought the Lord in the form of worship that Nehemiah 8 talks about, lifting up their hands, bowed their heads and worship the Lord with their faces to the ground. And this has definitely helped connect faith and vocation for me, because it did really form my leadership philosophy in the sense that I truly didn't understand the suffering part that I talked about at the beginning of this video. I really thought servant leadership was just the term that was used and you figure it out as you go. But I really, really found it helpful to dig into and study what it really means to be a servant leader and how that played out in each of these characters' lives. Because again, often the servant part comes before the leadership part, and we see that in Jesus's life too, that he was leading, but he was serving ultimately. Like that was his overarching goal, was service, and God used his service to the people to lift him up. Obviously, he's the Son of God, so that has its own implications there, but